Good afternoon. We want to break into programming here to take you to the White House, where the president is speaking about the border situation and the crisis. Let's listen in.
To deal with the pandemic, to rapidly expel people who crossed the border. It was designed to deal with the pandemic, but it's used as a means to expel people at the border. People turned away under Title 42, and they're not barred from trying to come back. They've been turned away. They go back, they try again, they try again. Well, you know, they can and they do try to re-enter the United States again and again, which makes the problem at the border even worse. And under the United States Supreme Court decision, a case on Title 42 later this year, my administration will make a decision, finally, what to do about Title 42. In the meantime, my administration will continue to use that authority as the Supreme Court has required. And until Congress passes the funds, a comprehensive immigration plan to fix the system completely, my administration is going to work to make things better at the border using the tools that we have available to us now. Today, my administration is taking several steps to stiffen enforcement for those who try to come without a legal right to stay, and to put in place a faster process, I emphasize a faster process, to decide a claim of asylum. Someone says, I'm coming because I'm escaping oppression. Well, there's got to be a way to determine that much quicker for people who are credibly seeking protection from persecution. Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas will detail these actions very shortly after I finish at Homeland Security. But here's one significant step we're taking. Over the summer, we saw a huge spike in the number of Venezuelans traveling through Mexico and attempting to enter the United States without going through our legal processes. We responded by using and ensuring that there are two safe and lawful ways for someone leaving the country to come to America. That was one of the reasons you were proposing. First, if they're seeking asylum, they can use an app on their cell phone called CBP1, O-N-E, CBP1, O-N-E. That's to spell it out, not the number one. To schedule an appointment at a port of entry and make their asylum claim there without crossing the border unlawfully and have a decision determined by an asylum officer, do they qualify? Second, in October, we worked with the Mexican government to launch a new parole program. There's another program called, you all know it, but the public may not, called the parole program, that immediately showed results by reducing the number of people crossing the border unlawfully. The way this parole program works, one must have a lawful sponsor here in the United States who agrees to sponsor you to get here. Then, that person has to undergo rigorous background checks and apply from outside the United States and not cross the border illegally in the meantime. If they apply and their application is approved, they can use the same app, the CBP1 app, to present at a port of entry and be able to work in the United States legally for 2 years. That's the process. But if their application is denied, or if they attempt to cross into the United States unlawfully, they'll be returned back to Mexico and will not be eligible for this program after that. So if they making the program available, if they apply and they do it properly, fine. If they don't apply and they try to come through, they're not going to have an opportunity to deal with the program. This new process is orderly, it's safe, and it's humane. And it works. Since we created the new program, the number of Venezuelans trying to enter America without going through a legal process has dropped dramatically, from about 1,100 per day to less than 250 per day on average. That's several hundred people on average every single day who are not crossing into America illegally. Today, I'm announcing that my administration is going to expand the parole program for people not only from Venezuela, but from Cuba, Nicaragua, and Haiti. Again, these four countries, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Haiti, these four countries account for most of the people now traveling into Mexico to try to start a new life by crossing the border into the United States of America on the southwest border. We anticipate this action is going to substantially reduce the number of people attempting attempting to cross our southwest border without going through a legal process. In fact, today, I'm announcing that Mexico has agreed to allow to return up to 30,000 persons per month who try, get caught, and get sent back from those 4 countries, or apprehended while attempting to unlawfully cross the border, the southwest border. My message is this: if you're trying to leave Cuba, Nicaragua, or Haiti, or have agreed to begin a journey to America, do not just show up at the border. Stay where you are and apply legally from there. Starting today, if you don't apply through the legal process, you will not be eligible for this new parole program. Let me reiterate. You need a lawful sponsor in the United States of America, number 1. And you need to undergo a rigorous background check, number 2. If your application is approved and you show up at a U.S. airport or when and where directed, excuse me, you have access. But if your application is denied or you attempt to cross into the United States unlawfully, you will not be allowed to enter. Look, we should all recognize that as long as America is the land of freedom and opportunity, people are going to try to come here. And that's what many of our ancestors did. And it's no surprise that it's happening again today. We can't stop people from making the journey, but we can require them to come here, that they come here in an orderly way under U.S. law. And let me say it again. The actions we're announcing today will make things better, but will not fix the border problem completely. There's more that has to be done. I laid that out in the first week I was here. That work will not be done unless and until the Congress enacts and funds a more comprehensive immigration plan that I proposed on day 1. Until Congress has acted, I can act where I have legal capacity to do so. Last year, I brought together 20 leaders, many of you were there, and from the Western Hemisphere, heads of state, to stabilize the flow of immigration, to expand pathways to immigration, and to manage the border humanely. The leaders of the hemisphere built on those efforts that I led when I was vice president to expand economic assistance to nations in North Central America, so people here can improve their economic prospects at home instead of having to leave for the United States. Most people would much rather stay in the country they are if they can feed their families, be safe, send their kids to school, and have opportunity. It's not like people, you've heard me say it before, it's not like people are sitting around a table and somewhere in Central America and say, I got a great idea. Let's sell everything we have. Let's give it to a coyote, a smuggler. They'll take us on a harrowing journey for thousands of miles to get to the United States. Then we're going to legally cross the border. They're going to drop us in the desert, and we're faced when we don't speak the language. Won't that be fun? I'm not being facetious. Well, President Harris led this effort to make things better in the countries from which they are leaving. And thanks to her leadership, she's been able to generate more than $3.2 billion from the private sector to create jobs and opportunities in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. Tell people stay in their own countries, home countries, where it'll be safer and they have some opportunities. We've also set up joint patrols and law enforcement with Mexico and Guatemala that share real-time information on locations that smugglers are using to convince migrant groups to cross illegally. That's what they're doing. They're out recruiting. They're taking all the savings or anything they have to take them on an incredibly dangerous journey. We embedded our Border Patrol officers with Mexican patrols to detect and raid human smuggling operations. Thus far, there had more than 7,000 arrests of human smugglers in the last 6 months. 7,000. That's not just human smuggling at the border. We're focused on cracking down on drug smuggling, which is a serious and deadly problem. And I made a promise we would try this. My administration has allocated record funding that added hundreds of additional Border Patrol agents and installed new cutting-edge technologies to be able to use effectively, like an X-ray machine, detailed to be able to look through these large containers to determine what's in the container and at the border. For example, since August of last year, Custom and Border Patrol have seized more than 20,000 pounds of deadly fentanyl. That's enough to kill kill as many as 1,000 people in this country. 20,000 pounds of fentanyl. It's a killer. It's a flat killer. And next week I'm going to travel to Mexico, where I'm going to meet with President López Obrador. We have a big agenda that ranges from the climate crisis to economic development and other issues. But one important part of that agenda is strengthening our border between our nations. And I will visit the border myself this Sunday in El Paso to assess border enforcement operations, meet with the local officials and community leaders and the folks at the border sending me what they need that they don't have, and make it public what they conclude they need they don't have, to try to convince my Republican colleagues they should do something. And I know that migration is putting a real strain on the borders and on border communities. They can't do anything but that. We're going to get these communities more support. And I want to thank all the nonprofits, the faith groups, the community leaders, and other volunteers who will make sure that vulnerable immigrants have what they need to survive, whether it's food, warm clothing, shelter, medical care, right after their arrival. These religious and civic groups represent our nation's generosity, the best of our country, and they really do. They really do. And they're a powerful rebuke to the hostility and even the hate which many people face when they arrive here legally. So let me close with this. Our problems at the border didn't arise overnight and not going to be solved overnight. It's a difficult problem. It's clear that immigration is a political issue that extreme Republicans are always going to run on. But now they have a choice. They can keep using immigration to try to score political points, or they can help solve the problem. They can help solve the problem and come together to fix the broken system. Before Congress adjourned for the holidays, some Democrats and Republicans, a few of them, got together, both sides up in the Senate, and decided they were going to put together a comprehensive plan on immigration. But the Republican leadership and other Republicans, I don't know exactly who did it, rebuked it and rejected it out of hand. It broke up. Just like they rejected my plan 2 years ago. Just like they rejected my recent request for an additional $3.5 billion to secure and manage the border with more holding facilities, better transportation, additional funding for 2,000 new asylum officers and personnel, 100 new immigration judges to more rapidly adjudicate for people when they come here, and how much, and so much more. Think about it. I mean, if this were something, if we had to have 100 more immigration officers to see to it that we're able to import something we needed very badly, it wouldn't take very much time to get it, would it? It'd be real done. Or conversely, if there are criminal gangs coming into the nation, but when it comes to immigration, it seems like it's a better issue for them than trying to solve it. Look, we need more resources to secure the border. Yet again, extreme Republicans have said no. Many Republicans agree we should do something. But it's time to stop listening to their inflammatory talk. It's time to look at their record. As I've always done when I'll sit down with anyone who in good faith wants to fix our broken immigration system. And it's hard. It's hard on the best of circumstances. But if the most extreme Republicans continue to demagogue this issue and reject solutions.
All right, you were just listening in to President Biden from the White House talking about the border crisis and coming up with a plan and how to really combat what's going on right now. But we want to send things over to our local 10 News reporter, Glenna Milberg. She's live in Miami to break down the president's new plan.
And Glenna, interestingly enough, the president talked a lot about Texas and the southwest border of the United States, but I did not hear much mention of Florida. Does his plan, I would assume, also include Florida and our crisis?
You know, that's such an interesting question, because our part of the world lately in the last week has been solely focused every day. We have groups of people coming from Haiti and Cuba, mostly. It's the sea crossing, really dangerous journeys on those boats and ships. We're reporting on it. We have crews everywhere. That was not part of the president's talk. What the president was doing, headline and context, coming up with a plan for the border. And because the border has been such a political Achilles heel for him, that this is he's kind of riding national security and humanitarian while Congress is struggling to pick a speaker. Maybe he believes that this is the time to really talk about what his administration can do without much blowback. But in any case, let me take you to some video, mostly from our part of the world, because What we're really focused on, just like the president, are people who are getting out of Cuba, Haiti, Venezuela, Nicaragua. This is a direct pipeline, especially to South Florida and increasingly to the southern border of Texas, because people from those countries actually go to South America and make the really dangerous trek across the border, and we have seen just a crisis, a surge, ebb and flow over the years. And that is what the president seems to be addressing in his speech today on two fronts. One, he outlined what could be legal immigration assist, focused on legal, you heard the word legal immigration, and trying to curb illegal immigration. Still, there's so much confusion and questions in many cases on who is legal and who is not, because when someone crosses the border to ask for asylum, that is perfectly a legal process. So you heard the president really outline things like an infrastructure for judges to hear cases and humanitarian help for refugees. And then on the national security front, you heard him talk about beefing up the security at the border, using technology, infrared on trucks coming over the border, an app that asylum seekers can use. So he really got very detailed on how his administration wants to put into place components for legal immigration, but that leaves a giant question about what is happening in our neck of the woods, people coming by sea in record numbers over the last few, at least weeks, and over the last year, and mostly from the kinds of countries that we know are very difficult, whether politically, economically. In Haiti's case, gangs rule the streets, violence there, and to that end, we're here at a social service agency specifically for Haitian immigrants in Miami, and spoke to one of the people here who directs some of the programs. I want to stop quickly so you could hear what he had to say.
If they are to engage in sending people back to Haiti and to other countries of origin that are under very dangerous conditions, what happens to them when they arrive in the country, as well as what may happen to them if they try to enter here again and something happens to them en route, they bear the entire responsibility for, because this is a cruel and inhumane practice that needs to stop.
So you hear people like Paul addressing migrants as a whole. You heard the president today separating legal migration and illegal migration, and to many people trying to escape, they don't care. They just want out, and they want someplace safe and prosperous. You heard the president mention Congress. Congress has been trying to pass immigration reform probably for the last decade or more. A lot of the South Florida lawmakers are involved in that. So many layers, so difficult, so political. That hasn't happened, and you heard the president finally call on them to try to do something again, and still. Lastly, President headed to El Paso on Sunday for his first trip to the southern border since he's president. That is not lost on Republicans, who have been hammering the Biden administration over mostly national security where it comes to immigration at the border. So much more to come on this story as we've been living it for decades now. I'm Glenna Milberg, live in Miami today, Local 10 News.
Okay, Glenna, thank you.